This is where it happened. This is the spot where the only Fremont police officer to have died in the line of duty was killed. It happened on November 3rd, 1948. His name was Joe Biggs. My name is Andy Brandon, and this is the story of Joe Biggs. George Joseph Biggs grew up in Fremont. He went by his middle name, Joe. He attended Fremont Ross High School in 1939 as a freshman. He played football and lettered all 4 years. In almost every group photo, he's next to his best buddy, Dick Myers. Here's Joe number 98 and Dick 87. Their freshman year, they went 8-2 and won the Buckeye League championship. Fremont fared okay against its rivals during Joe and Dick's tenure. They were 3-1 against Findlay and 1-3 against their bitter rival, Sandusky. Here's Joe and Dick proudly posing for the Letterman's Club, also known as the F Club. And here's Joe dancing with a young lady. To give some context for this period in history, December 7th of their junior year was the day Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. When Joe began his senior year of high school, the United States had already joined the Allied forces in World War II. Joe decided to leave school short of completing his final year to serve his country as a Marine, right in the middle of the deadliest war that's ever been fought. Joe enlisted in the Marine Corps on February 11th, 1943. He earned the weapons qualification of rifle marksman on April 17th that year. He participated in action against the Japanese on Saipan, Tinian, and Iwo Jima. I'm not a World War II historian and can only speculate on what Joe's experience was like. But from what I've read, the Battle of Iwo Jima was a 5-week bloodbath. And so I feel confident in assuming that his time in action was nothing short of heroic. There is a World War II memorial at Roger Young Park in Fremont. Normally locked, it holds several iron plates on which are etched the names of those who served in World War II from Sandusky County. On Memorial Day 2021, the memorial was unlocked for public to view. Joe's name is etched on the first plate. I'm reminded that he went by his middle name. In December of 1945, Joe was honorably discharged from his service as a Marine and returned to a thriving post-World War II Fremont. From this time until mid-1948, he attended Findlay College, played football, and worked a few different jobs. During this time, he helped pay for medical treatment for his younger sister, Rosalind. Some of the photos I have acquired don't have much context, but clearly he was quite an athlete. Here he is standing in a wedding party for the wedding of my friend Charlie Serfozo. Charlie and I talked about Joe Biggs many times. Regretfully, Charlie passed away in early 2017 before I could capture any of our conversations on camera. In August of 1948, Joe joined his good buddy Dick Myers and became a Fremont police officer. Fremont police received word very early on the morning of November the 3rd that two criminals had just held up a gas station in Avon Lake in a 1940 Packard they had stolen and were headed towards Fremont on Route 20. The two bad guys are Arthur Benner and William Shacklet. Two Fremont police cruisers were positioned to intercept the bandit car near the intersection of Sandusky Avenue and State Street, in front of what was then the Lakeshore Bus Depot. In one cruiser was Officer Gilbert Nesbitt and Joe Biggs. In the other cruiser was Joe's good buddy, Dick Myers. Myers spots the bandit car, and both cruisers converge on it as they cross the bridge, coming to a stop at the traffic light at Arch Street. The significance of this moment cannot be overstated. Here you have two best friends who grew up together. They did everything together. From the time they were kids, they were in the same classes, clubs, and on the same sports teams. Now it's 6 a.m. on a cold November morning, and these two young Fremont police officers are walking side by side towards a stolen car and two very dangerous criminals. As they approach, the Packard takes off. Joe makes a split-second decision to jump on the side of the car, standing on the running board. Arthur Benner, driving the Packard, attempts to lose Joe by swerving and sideswiping a truck in the opposite lane. His first attempt failed. His second attempt succeeded. Joe Biggs was crushed between the Packard and an eastbound truck that was stopped at the light at Arch Street. He lay there in the middle of State Street, right in front of the Fremont post office, fatally wounded with minutes to live. Nesbitt immediately slides across the seat of the cruiser, grabs the wheel, and begins pursuit of the bandit car. He chases them up State Street Hill. The bandit car turns its lights off, then turns left on Napoleon Street, then attempts a right turn on Wood Street, which is a very sharp turn, but moving too fast, loses control, crashes into a garage. Nesbitt and Myers once again converge on the bandit car. Benner is able to escape, but Shacklet is shook up with a head injury and is captured. At this point, according to Nesbitt's report, Shacklet, referring to Benner, says, "That dumb son of a bitch." I can relate to his frustration. He signed up for a petty crime spree and is now facing a police department whose newest, youngest World War II veteran officer they just killed. I'd probably say something like that too. Before transporting Shacklet to the station, Gilbert Nesbitt and Dick Myers returned to Joe. They stayed with their young fellow officer until the ambulance arrived. At this point, I don't think there was much life left in Joe. Dick described this moment in his report with these words: "Joe looked to be in bad condition." I suspect those words don't really capture how Dick was feeling in that moment. Myers and Nesbitt drive south on Arch Street to the police station at Croghan Street. During this time, Nesbitt is driving with his right hand, pointing a gun at Shacklet with his left. Myers also has a gun on Shacklet from the back seat. Both Myers and Nesbitt say in their reports that Shacklet asks Myers, "If I run, will you shoot?" Myers replies yes. Then Shacklet asks, "Can you shoot straight?" There's no mention of Myers' reply to this question. They parked on the north curb of Croghan Street facing west, which is the police car you see on the right side of this image. The best description of what happened next was written by Dorothy Wright, a resident of an upper apartment of the building seen here on the right. The following is her statement. On the morning after Election Day, upon arising shortly after my alarm rang at 6 o'clock, I went to the window to close it. I noticed a police car draw up directly beneath my window into the second parking space from the corner, and hearing voices, I tilted the blind and watched a young police officer and two men come around to the rear of the car to cross the street. Immediately as they stepped off the curb, the one man broke into such a swift run that his heels beat a staccato upon the pavement. As I watched, fascinated, he cut off diagonally toward the opposite corner, in a line that would have taken him between the light pole that holds the thermometer and the flagpole. When he reached a little beyond the center of the street, I saw the police officer raise his arm and fire a gun. The fleeing man stumbled, and the momentum of his running carried him to within 7 feet, I should judge, of the south curb. He went down without a struggle and slid to a stop with his right shoulder against the top of the curbstone beneath the flagpole, his head pointing to the west. And that was it for William Shacklett. He woke up that morning with plans of theft and heists, but at 6:15 a.m. found himself lying lifeless on a bed of bricks. At 6:20 a.m. on the morning of November the 3rd, 1948, the announcement came over the police radio. Joe Biggs had passed away. As devastating as this news was, no one had time to grieve. Everyone was preoccupied with finding the man responsible. This guy, Arthur Benner. There is another hero in this story. His name is Herman. Herman Schneider, chief of the Fremont Police Department. He was called at 6 a.m. moments after Biggs was fatally injured. He rushed to the station and jumped into action. He immediately called for all hands on deck. Off-duty officers flooded into the station. He then orchestrated the largest manhunt in the history of Sandusky County. He had blockades put up with help from Clyde, Tiffin, Gibsonburg, Port Clinton, and the State Highway Patrol. Yet somehow Benner escaped. He stole a 1946 Buick 8 from Ellis Garage on West State Street, fled to his parents' home in Detroit, and stole his father's car. And about 20 minutes prior to the arrival of the Detroit police, he went on the lam. At this point, Chief Schneider took to the most effective weapon he had, his typewriter. He began corresponding with other police departments all over the country. Benner's parents cooperated with Fremont police and gave some indication of where he may go. First on the list was Erie, Pennsylvania. So Benner goes to Erie, Pennsylvania, opens a newspaper that says police suspect Benner will go to Erie, Pennsylvania. So then he leaves. Benner's travels from this point are not verifiable, and all we have is what he claimed. But according to him, from Erie he went to Waynesburg, Pennsylvania, then to Charleston, West Virginia, down through Louisiana, west through Texas, turns north and heads all the way up to Seattle, turns back east, spends a week in Nebraska, and then to Chicago. Meanwhile, in Fremont, a $950 reward is announced for any information leading to the capture of Arthur Benner. This reward offering is comprised of $500 from the city of Fremont, $300 from Tony's Bakery, $100 from the Fremont News Messenger, and $50 by the Fremont Cutlery Workers Union. $50 is something. It's not nothing. It all adds up. Needless to say, Fremont wanted to catch this guy. While in Chicago, Benner claims he considered turning himself in, after the holidays, but then read about the $950 reward and changed his mind. Makes total sense. Chief Schneider continued correspondence with several other police departments. He even reached out to the FBI, and he received assistance from J. Edgar Hoover. On February 4th, 1949, the chief's efforts paid off. Arthur Benner was captured in Sarasota, Florida. Chief Schneider, Officer Gilbert Nesbitt, and Sandusky County Prosecutor Thomas Dewey traveled to Sarasota to extradite Benner back to Ohio to face trial on the charge of murder. Benner's defense was that Shacklet was the driver and the aggressor, and it was all Shacklet's idea. The jury didn't buy it. Benner was charged with murder. There's much to say about the case, but this isn't a story about Arthur Benner. This story is about Joe Biggs. On Saturday, November 6th, 3 days after Joe was killed, services were held in his honor. Flowers filled the Weller Wonderly Funeral Home. Visitors came by the hundreds, including police officers from all over Ohio, Marines and veterans of other branches, high school and college friends, many others. A funeral cortege carried Joe's remains from the funeral home on East State Street to St. Joseph's Catholic Church. The cortege was led by 2 uniformed state policemen, followed by color guards of the Pacific Russell Mook Detachment, the Marine League of Fremont. In addition to members of the Fremont Police, Fremont Firemen, Mayor Harold Whitcomb, Richard Stutz of the Marine League was the marshal of the parade. Police Chief Herman Schneider, Dick Myers, and his father, County Sheriff Henry Myers. Many others who came to pay tribute. This photo was taken of the cortege at the exact spot where Joe was killed.
I'm Dana Dorsey, Fremont, Ohio, retired from Fremont Police Department, 1992, retirement date.
John Cahill, I'm a basketball coach here and a graduate of Fremont Ross.
I'm Dean Bliss. I'm also from Fremont and the current Fremont Police Chief.
I'm Andy Brandon. I'm just a guy who's obsessed with this story.
As we all are, I think.
So we are here at Billy's, and we are right outside of where this all went down.
Right.
So the Packard was pulled over right here at the arch.
Right.
And in that moment, I actually have an illustration in the video, and I think it's actually not correct. So it's got Joe and Dick on both sides of the Packard, just kind of casually walking up, and I don't think that ever happened. I believe they were probably way more cautious as they approached, and I think it probably took off before they ever got up next to it. So help me understand, like, what would standard protocol be if officers pull over a vehicle but they know that there's criminals and they know the vehicle is stolen? What's the standard procedure at that point?
In today's world,
Yeah, what's today's?
you know, we didn't ride in we don't have two-man cars like they did back then, two officer patrol cars. And typically what we'd do is we'd pull the vehicle over if it was me, or wait for another unit to be in the area, and we would approach the way you described, or call them out of the vehicle and do what we'd call a felony stop, where they put their hands out the window, open the door,
There's a
back up.
distinction made when you're dealing with, like, it's called a felony stop. So there's a distinction made between somebody you need to be very cautious in approaching versus a normal.
Absolutely, and I guess the reason I described two different ways is I don't know that I don't remember, did they know it was a stolen vehicle at the
Yes,
time?
yes, they had a BOLO, be
Yeah,
on the
because they had
lookout.
from the
And-
call box, I got the info.
Well, this was the only route through. We didn't have the bypass or turnpike.
Turnpike wasn't there.
Yeah. Another thing is, nowadays, you got to where you can radio and put it on the outside speaker.
Correct.
Driver, put both hands out the door, and you use that kind of precaution. But back in those days, heck, they just had gotten the radios, and you get in certain areas.
They didn't work.
No, so they had him stopped, and they couldn't do any of that. But he was approaching at caution, and all of a sudden, I don't recall. I remember reading it several times and listening to the stories. But he went to take off, and Joe jumped up on a running board. They had running boards in, and jumped onto the running board, and there was a tractor trailer coming eastbound, and they were going westbound, and he sideswiped into there, and that's what got Joe.
Yes. And I know that I read in one of the reports that he was reaching inside the car trying to disable.
Trying to turn the key off.
So
Trying
which
to
would
key off.
indicate now it's November, so it's cold outside. So
Right.
that indicates that the window is down.
Well, the guy rolled the window down to see what the officer wanted, and when I think he mentioned to him that he wanted him to step out of the car so he could talk to him or something like that about because they robbed a place in Cleveland or something, and I forget exactly how it happened, but it's somewhere that's close to what it was.
The reports don't give a lot of details about that moment.
Yeah.
Even Schneider's, that is like 8 pages long, doesn't really give a lot of detail around that. And so when I think about that moment, there's two different possibilities. They were approaching very cautious and ordering them out without getting close to the vehicle. But it sounds like maybe, and maybe your memory is also influenced by conversations that you had, because it sounds like maybe they did really get up close to the vehicle. I mean,
Neil
this is not
Nesbitt
a
was there at
crucial
the
detail.
time, and he's the one that told this story too, and about Myers and them. But if you read the reports, when I read the reports, I had the feeling of what the officer's going through. We just lost a brother.
Yeah.
And and sometimes that impairs your thinking to put down into writing what you're doing. And that could be part of the reason that some of that was omitted and not added in there properly. But you try to do the report the best you can, and from memories and from listening to everybody. But Report writing takes a certain skill too, and back in those days, I think certain few could only do a report, but that's the way it is. But you know, when you lose a brother, it's just devastating.
Yeah.
Well, they took Shacklet down to the station,
Right.
and then we all know what the report says about what happened there. In fact, it's corroborated by a statement made by Dorothy Wright, who saw, and that's a very detailed statement.
And the officer's in a different mode. You don't want to think that you want to take somebody else's life. That's the last thing you want to do, regardless of what they've done. But you don't, you know, it's hard to say until you're in that circumstance what happens. That's what a lot of people don't understand, the circumstances that a lot of officers are in. And they got to make a judgment quick, and we got one guy away and we can't let this one get away because we got a guy that's gone, you know.
I've always thought about that too. Like this happens, I don't know if they know for certain he's passed away then, but it didn't look good.
Yeah.
And so you didn't capture one of the two guys. The other guy takes off running. You know, you don't want to lose them both. And so you know, you've got all of those emotions going, and
Absolutely.
yeah.
So they did. You're right. They did come back. So they go get Shacklet, and they actually come back to check on Joe. And from what I've read, in that moment, Joe was not. He didn't have much life left.
No.
And so yeah, that's Dick Meyer's state of mind.
Yeah.
His best friend is lying there, and now they take this guy down to the station.
You mentioned best friends. I know when you talked to me about this originally, I went and got yearbooks from back in the day, and it's funny how often they're pictured together. You know, senior football picture, they're next to each other in the front row. You know, so it literally, I think they spent a lot of time together, ended up together in pictures, and then you know, end up serving together. So
I think that Myers talked him when Joe got out of the Marine Corps. He talked him into taking the test and getting on the department, and I think that's how he got on. To be honest with you,
Wow.
Kind of persuaded by Dick, and so you know Dick probably that's another thing to think about.
Yeah.
It's all my fault. I talked him into getting on.
Yeah, you're right. That's true. So what happened to Myers after?
well, so Andy got me started in this, and Dick Myers marries his high school sweetheart. She's a Fremont girl. They get married. He stays, and I believe doesn't serve too much longer after this all goes down.
No.
Ends up moving to White House and becomes a huge booster in Anthony Wayne sports. Does a lot of youth activities, biddy sports. Coaches a lot. I believe helps found their booster organization. And you read the obituary. It sounds like he never met somebody he didn't like. Still well thought of here. In my mind, I always wonder how that all affected him, and if he just couldn't, you know, stand being in Fremont.
This is what a statement that Gil Nesbitt made, that when he resigned, he just said that he couldn't take it anymore, you know, and shooting that guy was really working on him, and losing his best friend.
Sure.
And he says, you know, and was he right or was he wrong? You know, and a lot of say, hey, you just did what you had to do, you know, and it's just a sad situation because you find yourself at the wrong place at the wrong time. That's just one of those incidents. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
Just like, you know, if he'd have went through 10 minutes earlier, they'd have missed him.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
I got so into this, I took some solace in the fact that it looked like, from all reports, he lived a really good life, though.
Yes.
He had a family
Yeah,
that he really
right.
liked. His wife just passed away, Bernice, I believe her name was. Just passed away not too long ago. But, you know, he played a lot of tennis, played a lot of ping pong. He talked about the friends he had. He never met a stranger. So, you know, just you get into these stories, and I didn't know the man, obviously, but I felt some solace in the fact that he lived a good life after all this went down. So, made me feel good.
Well, yeah. Once he got away from things that was putting him under duress, you know. Yeah.
It'd be tough to go down that road and see that spot. I would
Well,
think, you know.
and tough to go into the station and And see the memorial of Joe
Right.
up there too, you know,
Sure.
I mean, holy cow.
His dad was a police officer too, right? Dick Meyer?
He was a stub.
Okay.
Yeah, he was sheriff. He was the sheriff before Ted Paul was.
Okay.
How long after the event did he resign?
It wasn't too long, maybe a month, 6 weeks maybe.
Oh, that quick.
Okay. Wow.
Smokey took his spot, and I think I just read he started in 45.
No, this guy, no, Smokey, this guy come on, this happened in 48, November.
Okay, yeah.
And Joe came on August 48, and then Smokey took his place.
That's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Phil Huss took his place. He said, I always wanted to be on the Fremont Police Department, but I didn't want it this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to take a moment and appreciate the effort to commemorate Joe Biggs at the station. There's a mural in the room that you enter. There's a mural, and then it's got a memorial to Joe Biggs. And then deeper into the station, in a different room, there are really iconic pieces of the police report in a different, more detailed memorial to Joe, which includes the letter from J. Edgar Hoover.
Oh, cool.
So it's at the station, so it's not in the
Right.
report for today. But and then there's I think there's a wall where all the officers are painted.
Yeah, all the officers that have worked for Fremont PD, including Sergeant Dorsey, was his name's on the wall. And Joe Biggs is different because it's outlined in gold.
Yeah.
And Katie Swartz, who's a dispatcher with the county, actually painted that for us. She was a previous dispatcher with us. And then the mural in the front was painted by her as well.
Okay. So yeah, as somebody who's passionate about this story, I mean, I really appreciate the station, putting all that effort into commemorating, the sacrifice of this young man.
Yeah, so much of history gets lost over time. We've talked about that with the new school, moving things from Ross and what goes and what stays. So I think it's awesome you're, keeping that memory alive.
And my picture going to get taken down from the Friends of Ross. Remember
make
when
sure
you
we'll-
walk in?
Yeah.
Yeah, right there.
Look at it every day.
Every May we actually go to the Toledo Police has a fall memorial during Officer Week, and a representative from our department actually goes up there and calls his name.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
We used to have that here all the time.
So Benner's captured in February,
Right?
and what happens next?
Well, I think it's so fascinating in some ways that Benner is captured months later in Florida. They bring him back here, and you were talking about he was kind of a fan favorite with the females here in town, and I don't. You have more stories on that than I do. So they brought him food, or I mean, what did they do?
Yeah, they were. Well, my grandma told me that, and she was, by the way, she was like disgusted by this.
Yes.
Oh,
She couldn't
yes.
believe it.
Right.
But like her friends, people that she knew were just so into this guy. We got the pictures of him in the paper. He had this movie star quality about him. And so there were young women in Fremont, and there were young women that came from other places to see him. And there's an article written about how these three, I believe in the article they're referred to as good-looking young women, and they show up and they're wanting to see Benner and they're wanting to be part of the trial, and then they're told, well, he's not even been indicted yet. His trial won't be for a couple of weeks. So, but yeah, he was quite popular with young women.
Yeah. So he gets convicted and he escapes from prison not once but twice, and we were just talking about that off the air. The guy, it was tough to find information on him because you'd search the web and you'd find out, different things. But Bill Bray, who's a big Fremont guy, has a newspaper.com thing, so he was searching with me, and he found an article where they talked about, I believe it was Forgash, said if he passed him on the street, he wouldn't have known him. This was like 16 years later, and he escaped twice from prison. And then I read some stuff that he did get released did some work for the governor of Ohio. I don't know in what capacity. I don't know if that's true, but he ended up passing away in Monroe, Michigan in 2015. And I told you guys before, if I would have known about the story earlier, because my hook for this was Archie Biggs. My dad were friends, and Archie Biggs was Joe's brother and was a middle school teacher and a good guy. I would have made the trip to talk to Benner just to answer some of my own questions, like what were you thinking? You know, I don't. It just would have been fascinating to hear his side of all of this, but missed it by a few years. So
Yeah, and you're kind of blowing my mind. Like this story is already incredible. Like what happened right out here is already kind of pretty crazy.
Something you see in the movies.
yes,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Benner escapes from prison not once, but twice.
yeah.
And then you showed me the article on your phone. It's got a picture of him, and that's definitely him.
Yeah.
So we're not mixing up him
No.
and Arthur Benner. That's definitely the guy.
Yeah, I mean, it was in the Fremont paper. They quote the police chief at the time that he was Forgash was, I believe, around then. I believe it was Forgash. I might be wrong on that. I reading a police report earlier. He talks about he was the most afraid man in Avon Lake.
Yeah.
And even then, he's trying to push the buck on the guy that didn't make it. So
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
out there to defend
yeah.
himself. So
Yeah.
yeah. I didn't really have anything to do with this. I was just riding along, and he stole the car, and I was scared. And,
Yeah, it was all Shacklet was the mastermind
Yeah.
behind all of it. Yeah, that was his defense. Can we get into the police report a little bit?
Absolutely.
So his patch is in here, his notebook. Mr. Dorsey, I know that you're familiar with some of those things.
so cool.
Yeah, matter of fact, I had one almost similar to that Joe Bomber had.
Really.
And this was the ticket book back then. Violations.
I believe this is his Marine photo, right?
That's it. Marine Corps,
Photo.
Yeah.
Very cool.
See, this is one thing I'd like to note is 1973 is when we went to the patch that the chief has on now. See, it got the Ohio in it. There's old Betsy used to be on. It was still there when I came on.
Old Betsy, yeah.
Yeah, the old Betsy cannons.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So these are photographs of the police car as it's parked facing west on Croghan Street to show, to illustrate.
See the brick roads, yeah.
Still got bricks there.
They used to have it down State Street, and they had the old trolley tracks.
So Shacklet ran in this direction and then fell between.
Right in that area.
Amazing how much of this is gone,
Yeah, I had pictures of these, but yeah, thrifty cleaners. Oh my Lord!
Here's the banged up Packard.
See, this was right there, thrifty cleaners. That's where Pete Zimmerman had the barber shop.
Okay.
Him and Louie,
Yeah.
and then right here on the corner is Mazzacco Realty. Later on, yeah. But that's the old city hall. Yeah.
If you look, that car actually had a lot of significant
see, you
damage on
didn't-
that side.
Yeah.
You didn't have the bubble gun machine on top neither. See?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, you just had them on the front there, and spotlights are there though.
I think, cause you don't see running boards on cars anymore.
No.
I thought that was interesting.
When I
too,
was
you
a
see
kid, you did.
Yeah.
What's interesting is when I would ask people about this story, the running board is the one consistent piece of information. Like that's what stays in everyone's mind.
Yeah.
Joe
I want
jumped
to point out something else to you. See the vent wings? That's what you rolled in to let the wind in. Yeah, the vent wings.
Yeah.
Didn't have air conditioning in those days.
No.
This is the car that Benner stole to drive to Detroit to his parents' house.
Still here in Fremont, right?
Yeah,
Right.
stole it here in Fremont.
Yeah.
How's this guy like?
don't
If you
know.
asked
You
me
see
to go
those?
out and steal a car, I couldn't do it.
No.
I couldn't do it then either.
Yeah. Holy cow.
Was it more common for people to leave their keys in their cars then?
Was supposed to, but it was easier to
Hot wire 'em?
Yeah, hot wire them or stick a screwdriver in there and turn it. Yeah,
He must have known. He must have known how to do that.
oh yeah. Well, he known how to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
Here's the garage they crashed into.
Oh, let me see that. It's been a long time since this. Oh yeah, I recall now.
I didn't see that.
The license plate.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. Can I take the label off?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. 1948. I was 8 years old.
That's cool. So that was on the Packard?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a report given by, I can't remember her name, but she lives over on the east side of town, and she was pulling out of her driveway, and she spotted these guys, and she noticed the orange Illinois plate, and that they just were acting suspicious. Like, like before the police even tracked these guys down, people in Fremont were like, "Who are these?"
Right.
You know. And she said that she just so happened to like hit the same red lights as them, and she just got the creeps when they would look over at her.
I'd like to thank you, Andy, for taking this at heart and getting a little interest in to keep this alive, and don't let people forget that we lost an officer in 48. Not only an officer, but he was a great family man and well liked by the community, and his whole family was well liked by the whole community, and it was one of our police officers.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It's been an absolute pleasure. All the effort that I put into this, and just connecting with other people and digging for pieces of this story has been more therapeutic for me than anything. And the more I've done it, the more I feel compelled that I think if people live around here, then they should know this story.
Well, I think the video and what you've done too, I mean, Biggs Kettner Park to me is still Eastside Park. I think it's like that for a lot of people, but when you start to know the story behind it,
right?
And again, stories in history,
you understand
they get lost if they're not retold.
Well, so it's not just a name.
Yeah, and so you put it together, because for me it was, is that some relation to Archie Biggs when they named it, and I didn't know any of it until you got this ball rolling. So it's you deserve a tremendous thanks for getting it going.
Absolutely, and I'm going to tell you, within the last 3-4 years, his granddaughter Joe Biggs's granddaughter came up to the police department, and she just wanted to see where her grandfather worked. And we actually sat down and went over the case file with her. She was so pleased to hear that we still go to Toledo. We had the mural on the wall. And I think that gave the family some comfort that we hadn't forgot. And I think it's awesome that you haven't forgot.
Well, people don't even believe there used to be a building right there.
Right.
Where the station was.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
But I tell you what intrigues me most about this is how efficient, without the training that they have today, that they got in here. There was a few things that could have been done, but you got to take into consideration the frame of mind and everything else going on. But the more I read that and the Tannehill murder case, it intrigued me of how well all of the officers was versed in police work and common sense that they use, and just good plain old fashioned police work, and that's exactly what that was. And that's intriguing.
Yeah, they didn't have the internet or anything else to help on any of it.
Well, they don't have the equipment that they have today.
Right.
And the photography, you look how well that has and the picking up latent prints and everything. Look, the technology on that now.
Right.
And back then, buddy, it was just.
I'm sorry if I'm interrupting.
No.
One thing for me in this whole story was Joe himself, and that he didn't do anything wrong.
No.
And he was trying to protect people, and he didn't have a life. He didn't get to tell his whole story. What does he do from beyond this? He sounded like a great guy that could have done a lot of great things. And I think, you start looking up Arthur Benner and Shaq Lit, and there's some level, I think, of glorifying the villains in some of these things. And, they killed this guy, and he left behind a lot of people. So for me, a lot of this story for me was him, and finding stuff out about him, and finding out what the villains did too. I think that's part of the story, but the whole relationship with Biggs and Myers and how it affected Myers, and the fact that Joe, we say his name once a year, he's got a park named after him, but he didn't get to do things that everyone else got to do for no fault of his own. So for me, that's part of the passion for this story for me.
I'll tell you something else. I just want to get this over. There's a man that served his country.
Yeah.
United States Marine Corps. He fought in several battles, World War II, survived. He comes on in August of 48, killed November of 48 by a person and here he was, he served his country and he's serving his community, and he loses his life here instead of the battles.
Yep.
Right.
And I'm not saying he should have lost his battle
Right.
here, but he shouldn't have lost this battle.
No.
And it's too bad that had to happen.
Yep.
I agree, and to tie in what you just said to what you just said, I think about that a lot, and I think about the moment that he decided to jump on the side of the pack.
Boy.
Because I do believe you're right, John, that was a decision that he made to protect our community.
He wasn't going to let him get away.
No.
And I believe that on some level, he just had served in Iwo Jima, and which was extremely violent.
Right.
And there was a lot of death and a lot of, and he survived that. And I wonder if, I just speculate that instilled in him the confidence to do what many of us probably would not have been brave enough to do, and that is to continue to chase and pursue these guys in a heroic way, by not letting them escape Fremont, much less he didn't want them to escape Arch and State Street.
Right.
He jumped, and he thought he could disable the vehicle by reaching in the window, and maybe he was inches from doing that. I don't know.
Well, I think too, and this is just my Fremont pride in me, but he's a little giant, like they do
Right.
stuff, and so he won in football. He was a tough guy. He played college football, and so he fought in the war, and he was going to take care of business. And he just
Once a Marine, always Marine. Once a little giant, always a little giant. Right?
Absolutely.
Once Fremont PD, always Fremont PD.
Absolutely. You got that right. I still believe in it.
Yep.
He was all three of those things.
Yeah.
And he was exceptional in all three of them.
that was cool. I hope I'm not messing anything up. That whole end right there, but that was cool. It gave me chills a little bit.
Yeah, this is going to be really, really good. All right, if you are watching, you are 50 minutes into this video, and I thank you for your interest in this story. I need to make some acknowledgments. Dick Bowersocks, thank you. Dick provided many of the photographs and military documents that helped me tell the story. He is Joe Biggs' nephew. Thank you to Chief Bliss and the Fremont Police Department for allowing access to the police report, which really was the centerpiece that drove this story. Also, we turned the police department upside down one afternoon looking for photographs of Herman Schneider. So thank you guys. I want to thank the good people at the Burchard Public Library, the Hayes Presidential Library, and the Detroit Public Library. Thank you. Thank you to Timothy Krylik for the artistic illustrations like this one. Awesome job on those. Thank you, Tim. Thank you to Billy's Restaurant, where we had the table discussion. They were very gracious hosts. Thank you. Thank you to John Cahill, Mr. Dorsey, and Chief Bliss for participating in that discussion. None of us were really comfortable with the whole camera thing, but it really went great. It was great. I'll always remember that. It was very special. Thank you to my friend Bob Gross, who continually pushed me to get this thing done. Thank you. Charlie Serfozo, rest in peace, my friend. We are telling Joe's story. So, yeah, if you are in any way connected to this story, or if you have information, that we didn't have, please reach out. We'd love to hear from you. And if you did enjoy this video, you should know that there was also a fireman who lost his life in the line of duty, only one in the history of Fremont. It happened the same year, happened 1 month later. His name is George Kettner. So stay tuned. Thank you.